Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into why some of our biggest, most frustrating problems just never seem to go away. And we're going to explore a really powerful idea. What if the solution isn't about changing people's behavior, but about changing the very structure of the world around them?
So let's kick things off with a question that I am sure we have all asked ourselves at some point. You see it at work, you see it in the news, the same issues just keep popping up again and again. Things like fraud, data breaches, you name it. Why does it so often feel like we're just putting a Band-Aid on a problem that never actually heals?
Well, the answer really lies in how we frame the problem in the first place. It turns out there are two fundamentally different ways to look at any issue. There's the behavioral approach, which is what we almost always do, and then there's the structural approach, which, as you'll see, completely changes the game.
Okay, so on one side you have behavioral intelligence. This is all about managing people. It relies on training, awareness campaigns, and basically just hoping everyone makes the right choice at the right time. But structural intelligence, it doesn't rely on hope. It actually re-engineers the system itself so that the wrong choice isn't just discouraged, it's physically impossible to make.
To really see how this works in practice, let's walk through a pretty classic case study. Just imagine a con man who keeps scamming people in a small community. How would we normally try to stop him?
Right. The usual approach is purely behavioral. We'd run awareness campaigns, we'd put up wanted posters, and we'd tell everyone, hey, be more vigilant. But notice something here. It's all reactive. It's like you're playing defense after the other team has already scored. And it leaves the system that allowed the scam to happen in the first place completely untouched.
But a structural fix? Well, it changes the rules of the game entirely. Instead of just trying to outsmart the con man, we make the system itself smarter. By doing things like requiring multiple signatures for a transaction to go through, or using payment systems that hold money in escrow, the fraudulent act itself becomes impossible from the start. All of the con man's clever tactics are now totally useless because the system simply will not let the scam go through.
And that brings us to the most crucial insight of this whole idea. Structural intelligence stops blaming the actors, and it starts fixing the stage they're performing on. The problem isn't just the bad guy. It's the system that gives that bad guy the opportunity to succeed.
Now, you might be thinking, okay, this sounds great, but this is way more than just a philosophy. It's an actual engineering discipline. So how can you tell if a fix is truly structural? Well, it turns out you can measure it.
It's called the Structural Intelligence Index, or SII for short, and it gives us a hard number. A low score means your system is reactive and it's vulnerable. A high score means it's preventive and structurally sound. It actually lets us prove whether a solution is truly effective and permanent or if it's just another Band-Aid. This score is calculated across 5 key areas that measure a system's real-world resilience. For example, it looks at something called detection lag time, which is basically asking how long can a bad actor operate before the system even knows they exist. It also measures actor adaptation resistance. In other words, if the scammer changes their tactics, does our whole solution fall apart or does it hold strong? All these factors combine to create that final, definitive score. And when we apply this index back to our con man case, the results are, well, they're staggering. The behavioral approach, just warning people to be careful, it scores a really weak 34. But the structural fix, it scores a 96. I mean, that massive gap is the proof, right there on the screen. It's clear evidence of which solution is truly superior.
Okay, so this framework works for a simple scam, but can it be applied to one of the most urgent and complex problems we face today? Let's take a look at school safety.
The old way of thinking about school safety really focuses on identifying potential threats among students or running drills. This is a classic behavioral approach, and it's tragically fallible because it relies on trying to predict human behavior, which is nearly impossible to do perfectly.
A structural approach, on the other hand, builds a shield. It stops trying to guess who a potential threat might be. Instead, it re-engineers the entire environment to make an attack logistically impossible to carry out undetected. Through things like controlled entry points, environmental sensors, and instant unified alerts to law enforcement, it creates these layers of automated structural protection.
And the result of that kind of system? It's a system with an SSI score of 94. That number represents a near-total elimination of structural vulnerabilities. It is a system that is fundamentally designed for prevention, not reaction.
So, when you step back from these specific examples, what's the big idea here? What's the major takeaway?
It's really about a fundamental paradigm shift in how we go about solving problems.
This is the core of it, right here. We move our focus from the individual actor over to the overall system. We go from being reactive, always a step behind, to being preventive. And ultimately, we stop applying these temporary behavioral patches and we start engineering permanent, resilient solutions.
And that leaves us with a final, pretty provocative thought. Think about some of the other really persistent problems out there: financial fraud, cybersecurity, even public health. What other issues could we finally solve if we stopped focusing on the symptoms and started redesigning the systems themselves?